Okay, everybody, today we are going to tackle a topic that most people would love to avoid, because this seems to be one of those things that when I suggest it when I am on the farm, I get a lot of pushback. So I thought it would be good to talk about this just a little bit, because although there's a lot of pushback for it, once we engage in it, there is a tremendous amount of benefit that can happen in terms of creating clarity for your succession plan. So we are going to be talking about job descriptions today. And again, as a reminder, when we are talking about succession planning, our focus should be to create as much clarity as we possibly can. When there's a lot of clarity, we get a lot of buy-in and we get people to calm down. When there is a lack of clarity, some unfortunate things can happen. For instance, expectations won't be met. There are inefficiencies that creep in, and oftentimes the outcomes become very unpredictable. So when we talk about job descriptions, I just want to keep in mind, I'm working toward having higher levels of clarity for you inside of your operation. So in the last video, we talked about the importance of having a management operating system that works in tandem with your business plan. So the management operating system, the one key element that I want you to keep in mind when we start talking about the importance of job descriptions is the accountability chart. So the accountability chart, as a reminder, is who is accountable for what and what is the flow of communication throughout your organization. So accountability, as we all know, is not possible without clarity regarding what each member of your team is responsible for. So we want to make sure that, again, clarity is king here. So there are some common mistakes that occur when we start talking about job descriptions. Oftentimes, what people do is they take a look at what the person is currently doing today and they just build a job description around that. What I want you to do instead is I want you to focus on what the organization needs rather than what they are doing currently. The second thing is that we may have had a job description at one point in time, but the person may have drifted or expanded outside of the scope of that job description. And so what will start to occur is there's going to be gaps. And we can't identify those gaps very well when we are building the job description around that person. So the gaps are oftentimes what we find are creating a lot of frustration for the team. So we want to make sure, again, as a reminder, that we're building a job description for the role that the operation needs, and we're using that activity to identify gaps so that we can make sure that they get filled. So writing job descriptions it's actually a really easy activity. Some people think they need to be all nice and they need to be pretty and they need to have all this language to them. But I'm going to tell you, it can be pretty simple. Basically, number one, you need to have what is the job, what's the pay grade, and what's the reporting relationship. You might want to write down what the hour requirements are, and you might want to identify whether or not there's going to be overtime or weekend work. So in agriculture, that's usually a given, but it's good to spell it out when you start putting these together. Second thing that you're going to do in the job description is write a summary of the objective of the job. So you're going to list general responsibilities and descriptions of key tasks, and you might want to include their purpose as well. Third thing is, what are the qualifications? So is there an education requirement? Is there a certain level of experience? Do they need to have some training or technical skills? So just simply outlining that. And then the fourth thing is you'll want to just identify if there's any specific demands. So that could be something like heavy lifting or operating heavy equipment, whatever that might be. The fifth thing is just the job duties themselves. So there's two features of this that you want to keep in mind. Number one, you want to identify the tasks that are going to comprise about 90 to 95% of the work done. And then the second part of that is you want to list them in order of the time consumed. So you're going to put the part of their job that takes up the most of their time first, and then work down from there. So for a lot of operations, these are really just one sheet of paper with these 5 things identified. So again, it doesn't have to be fancy. We just have to go through the exercise. So again, we've got clarity to the person who is performing the role, and we've got the opportunity to identify gaps to make sure that our operation is running smoothly. So what happens if you don't put job descriptions in place. And as I go through this, if you're an operator who doesn't have them in place currently, this may sound a little bit familiar. So number one, you're going to end up with the wrong people in the wrong seats. So that's just wrong people doing the wrong jobs. So that is going to result in poor performance. Maybe you've got turnover issues. You might find that you're getting a lot of damage to equipment. You might have tension between team members. And basically all of that is just boiling down to creating a lot of damage to your culture. The second thing is it's really hard to hold people accountable when they're not clear what their role is or who they report to. So I see this on farms all the time where we've got one person that told somebody to do this, another person comes in and tells them to do something else, and then you've got this poor employee in the middle that isn't sure what they're supposed to be doing. And certainly someone is going to be upset, right? Because one set of tasks is not going to get done. So this can be a source of a lot of tension. The other thing is sometimes amongst family members, it creates the opportunity to do a lot of comparing, and it creates competition. So we can hear things like, they don't work as hard as I do, they're not as committed as I am, they're not doing as much, they're not here as often as I am. So there can be a lot of things that can creep into the language of your operation that are not going to be very healthy when we don't have clarity around roles. The third thing that you're going to want to be careful about if you don't put job descriptions in place is that compensation can be very hard to evaluate. So you may end up overpaying someone or you may end up underpaying someone. The unfortunate thing about underpaying is you may lose them. The bad thing about overpaying is you may never really get them to up their game to the level of compensation that they're actually receiving. So you want to make sure that you're careful about that. And then of course, the fourth sort of thing that happens when we don't have job descriptions in place is it's really hard to manage a team when roles and expectations are not clear. So I want you to encourage you to take just a little bit of time to build your accountability chart, get your job descriptions in place, and build all of those into your management operating system.